Good morning and welcome to the Public Service Commission of South Carolina. We are here this morning for hearing in docket number 2023-2022E. Let's take a roll call of commissioners. With us virtually, we have Commissioner Carolee Williams and Commissioner Irvin. Present in the hearing room, we have Commissioner Justin Williams, Vice Chair Powers, Commissioner Thomas, Commissioner Caston, and Chair Belser. Let me recognize our staff counsel, Ms. Clausen, to read the docket.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're here today on docket number 2023-222-E, the application of the South Carolina Public Service Authority, Santee Cooper, for a Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Convenience and Necessity for the construction and operation of the Conway to Perry 230 kV line and associated facilities pursuant to South Carolina Code Annotated Section 583310 et sec, and request to proceed with initial clearing pursuant to South Carolina Code Annotated 5833-110, Section 7. This matter was noticed for hearing today, October 11th, 2023, at 10 a.m. Madam Chair, I believe the docket is in order and we are ready to proceed.
Thank you, Ms. Clausen. Good morning. Who's appearing for the South Carolina Public Service Authority, also known as Santee Cooper?
Good morning, Chair Belser and members of the Commission. I'm Megan Driggers, in-house counsel with Santee Cooper, and with me is Stephen Pelcher, Deputy General Counsel of Nuclear and Regulatory Compliance at Santee Cooper, and we appreciate the opportunity to be heard today.
Thank you. Welcome, both of you. And who's appearing for the Office of Regulatory Staff?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Vice Chair Powers, and Commissioners. Chad Torrey on behalf of ORS.
Thank you, Mr. Torrey, and welcome to you as well. Are there any preliminary matters that need to come before the Commission before we begin?
Yes, Chair Belser, Santee Cooper requests to move into the record as the first hearing exhibit the application and exhibits A through D to the application that Santee Cooper filed on July 14th, 2023. I'll note Exhibit A, which is also filed as SK1 to the pre-filed testimony of Sarah Kent, was amended on September 6, 2023.
So you're asking for hearing Exhibit 1 to be the application as filed, but then the amendment, didn't that come in with Ms. Kent's testimony, so that'll be introduced with her
Yes, that can be
exhibits?
introduced with her testimony, Chair Belser.
Okay. So we will take as any objection to receiving the application?
No objection.
We will mark for identification as hearing exhibit number 1 the application and associated exhibits filed with the application on, well, July 14th.
Yes, sir.
And that'll we will receive that into evidence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you ready to proceed with your witnesses? Is this going to be a panel or individual?
No, ma'am. One of our witnesses is sick, so this is now going to be individual witnesses.
Oh, that's right. They're going to be virtual. Thank you.
At this time, Santee Cooper would like to call to the stand via WebEx Christopher Wagner.
Good morning, Mr. Wagner. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to ask you, would you state your name for me?
My name is Christopher Wagner.
And I'm going to ask you to raise your right hand and let me give you the oath to swear you in. Do you solemnly affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you once again state your name for the record?
My name is Christopher Wagner.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Santee Cooper as Director, Transmission Planning, Research, and Development.
Did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 10 pages of direct testimony pre-filed on August 23rd, 2023, and 2 pages of rebuttal testimony filed on September 26, 2023 in this docket?
I did.
Do you have any changes to that testimony?
I do not.
If I asked you the same questions today, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Thank you. Chair Belzer, at this time, I request the direct pre-filed and pre-filed rebuttal testimony of Mr. Wagner be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Wagner's pre-filed direct testimony and pre-filed rebuttal testimony will be received into the record as if given from the stand. And let me note, were there some corrected pages to his pre-file?
Not to Mr. Wagner's
Okay.
testimony, no ma'am.
Sorry, I'm getting confused. Thank you.
That's okay. And Mr. Wagner, did you also prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision one exhibit labeled CW1 filed as an attachment to your pre-filed direct testimony?
I did.
At this time, I request that exhibit CW1 attached to Mr. Wagner's direct testimony be admitted into the record as hearing exhibit 2.
The exhibit marked CW1 and pre-filed with Mr. Wagner's direct testimony will be marked for identification as hearing exhibit number 2 and received into the evidence of this case.
Thank you. Mr. Wagner, do you have a summary of your direct and rebuttal testimony?
I do.
Could you please provide that at this time?
Sure. Good morning, Chair Besler, members of the commission. In this proceeding, I submitted direct and rebuttal testimony. In my direct testimony, I discussed the need and necessity for the construction of the Conway to Perry Road 230 kV line and associated facilities, for which Santee Cooper is seeking a certificate of environmental compatibility and public convenience and necessity in this docket. Conway to Perry Road 230 kV line runs approximately 9.25 miles southeast from the Conway 230 kV switching station to the Perry Road 230 115 kV substation, and all but approximately half an acre would be within existing Santee Cooper rights-of-way. This line is designed for double circuit 230 115 kV construction and will replace portions of 2 existing older 115 kV lines. All lines and associated facilities in this application are located in Horry County, South Carolina. The need for this line was identified using transmission planning reliability standards established by NERC and supplemented with Santee Cooper's internal transmission planning criteria. Santee Cooper transmission planning assessments indicate that continued load growth due to significant residential and commercial development in Horry County will exceed the capabilities of existing transmission facilities in the area unless upgrades are made. Santee Cooper proposes to add the Conway to Perry Road 230 kV line and associated facilities to address the reliability issues and to assure that Santee Cooper remains in compliance with NERC reliability standards and Santee Cooper's internal transmission planning criteria. The addition of the Conway to Perry Road 230 kV line and associated facilities will provide the capabilities needed to serve existing and future load demands in a reliable and cost-effective manner. This proposed line and associated facilities, scheduled to be completed by December 1, 2025, serve the interests of the system economy and reliability and represent the most cost-effective and acceptable approach to facilitate continued safe and reliable service to Santee Cooper's customers. Public convenience and necessity requires the construction of this line and associated facilities as proposed, and Santee Cooper respectfully requests the Commission to issue a certificate of environmental compatibility and public convenience and necessity for the construction and operation of the Conway to Perry Road 230 kV line and the associated facility. In my rebuttal testimony, I addressed a recommendation raised by Office of Regulatory Staff witness Michael Seaman Wynn related to South Carolina Code 5833-180A1B. Mr. Seaman Wynn noted that Santee Cooper's application did not expressly address the provisions of the aforementioned code, which requires Santee Cooper to demonstrate that energy efficiency measures, demand-side management, renewable energy resource generation, available long-term power supply alternatives, or any combination thereof could satisfy the stated need in lieu of constructing the major utility facility. Mr. Seaman Wynn points out that while the Siting Act would include an electric transmission line and associated facilities of a designed operating voltage of 125 kV or more within the definition of a major utility facility, it appears that the alternative excuse me, that the alternate considerations are better suited for a new generation project than a new transmission project. Our rebuttal testimony concurred with Mr. Seaman Wynn's conclusion that the alternate considerations set forth in the code are better suited for a new generation project than a new transmission project, and also affirmed that the alternate considerations would not mitigate the constraints that drive the need for this transmission project. This concludes the summary of my testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Wagner. Chair Belzer and members of the commission, Mr. Wagner is now available for cross-examination by other parties and questions from the commission.
Thank you, Ms. Driggers. Office of Regulatory Staff?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for this witness? Mr. Wagner, I'll start. Good morning.
Good morning.
Can you go into a little bit more detail about alternatives that Santee Cooper looked at instead of or in lieu of this line? What other routes or measures were examined before determining this was the appropriate way to go?
Absolutely, Chair Belsler. Excuse me. In this area, there's really two 230 kV sources. There's a source at Conway, and then there's a source at Bucksville. We have, and then there's a 230 kV ring or network that goes through west of the coast up toward North Myrtle Beach and then back around toward Conway. This path goes through Perry Road from Bucksville, and from Conway it goes up to another station that we have called Red Bull. Excuse me. There's really existing corridors are about the only way in this area to access or to build new transmission facilities. There's a significant amount of congestion due to development, and there's also a lot of environmentally sensitive areas that we want to keep from impact. We generally will first look at existing routes, existing right-of-way or existing corridors that we have through the area. The two real viable options in this case were there are two lines right now from Bucksville to Perry Road. And there's one line from Conway to Red Bluff that serve this area. The line from Bucksville to Perry Road, the two lines are approximately, they're about a mile, a little bit more than a mile shorter than the 9.25 miles from Conway to Perry Road. But they are 230 kV lines. And we looked at rebuilding one of them for double circuit to give us another circuit through that area. What we found in that analysis is that it was more costly. 230 kV is more costly to construct than a double circuit 230/115, and it also had a lot of wetlands impact. There were a lot of significantly more wetlands that route than there were in the Conway to Perry Road route. It also was projected to take longer, cost more, as I mentioned, and we had 230 kV outage constraints to factor in there in the time of construction. So that was the main alternative plan that we looked at. When we focused in on Conway to Perry Road, we looked at alternative routes. There are two viable routes. One could follow the entirety of the Conway to Perry Road 115 kV corridor, which goes up toward the former Granger generating station location and then back down toward Perry Road. This was a slightly longer route. It also had, it went through a wetland area, and because it wasn't the most direct route, it was determined to be more costly. The most direct route is the route that was chosen between Conway and Perry Road, and it's a direct route that goes from Conway for a portion overbuilds the existing Conway to Carolina Forest 115 kV line. And then where it intersects with the existing Conway to Perry Road 115 kV line, we move over to that corridor and rebuild that line southeast toward Perry Road. Does that answer your question, Chair Bills?
Yes, it does. Thank you. And I believe you indicated in your direct and in your summary that there's only about a half an acre of new right-of-way that will be required. Is that correct?
Correct. That's correct, Chair Belsler. A portion of that, a very small portion adjacent to our Conway switching station, and then another very small portion adjacent to our Perry Road 230 115 kV substation. And the reasoning for the need is really driven by the routing of the line around that substation to make sure we've got adequate spacing to route that line into the substation.
Does Santee Cooper already have that right of way acquired or own that property, or is that something that's going to have to be secured from a property owner?
We are actively working with property owners and have a path toward obtaining that right of way.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wagner. That's all I have. Commissioner Caston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And good morning, Mr. Wagner.
Good morning.
Looking at the testimony and where you talk about NERC and the NERC reliability standards and thinking about this project in general, is the project primarily to comply with NERC reliability standards, the growth in Horry County, or both?
It's both, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you.
Growth triggers the NERC reliability standards require us to study certain contingency scenarios, and the growth triggers the thermal loading exceedance that we see that drives the need for this project. So it really is a combination.
Kind of assumed that, but I wasn't sure. And just out of curiosity, where or else witness, basically said that you didn't look at these things, but it's probably better suited for a new generation project rather than transmission project. And I think in your rebuttal, you said you agree with that. Do you agree with that better safe than sorry thing, or agree that it's better suited for a new generation project, or both of those?
I'd say I agree with both. It is more suited, or it is more appropriate when being considered against a new generation project. That's not to say we don't consider those types of alternate considerations for transmission where they make sense. Those are, in these cases, those are generally judgment calls. It becomes a cost, and benefit analysis as well. I mean, we're looking at all sorts of different new technologies these days, and does the cost associated with implementing something like that does it provide more benefit than the transmission project on a cost benefit basis? So, in this case, we're limited as to what we can do in this area due to the congestion, the growth, that sort of thing. There aren't a whole lot of land availability to implement some of these types of alternate considerations. So it becomes a difficult direction in a case like this. But those are things that we do consider, we do think about, especially given the direction the industry's taking.
Thank you very much, and appreciate you participating, not feeling well, being ill. Hope you feel better, and I know you'll feel better when you can get that tie and jacket off.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for you guys accommodating me.
No problem. Thank you.
Vice Chair Powers.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to you. I was looking through the application sometime, and it's I found it kind of interesting about the archaeological sort of things and historical values that you had to go through, and I wondered. I saw quite a number of cemeteries and I think some 30 or 40 archaeological sites. How do you deal with that, and who gives you approval when you're going through an area like that?
Yes, sir, Commissioner Powers. I'm not the expert when it comes to the environmental portion of this project. Witness Kent, who will be following me, I believe, in this testimony, is probably the more appropriate person to ask that question.
Okay. Well, let me ask you one other, maybe this another area that concerns me. I was on the Coastal Council for years. Are you having to do any mitigation with dealing with any of the wetlands?
Again, that would be a question for Ms. Kent.
Okay. Well, you are off the hook. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioners, further questions for this witness?
Chair Belzer.
Commissioner Carolee Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair Belzer. Good to see you, Mr. Wagner. We may be dealing with something kind of similar, so if I start coughing, you will understand. I would like to hear a little bit more about the load growth. And I think I recall that Horry County had the greatest population increase, or was the fastest growing. And is it residential? Is it business? Is it industrial? Is it all of the above?
It's generally all of the above. There is, it's mostly geared toward commercial and residential. Our retail service territory in that area is seeing record, new customer additions. Are on pace with previous records. So there's a lot of commercial and residential. There is some industrial that's driving some of it, but it's a little more limited than maybe some other areas of the state. But it is predominantly commercial and residential.
And is this forecasted to continue for a certain amount of time, or unlimited? Or can you talk any about how long? I'm wondering things like when the next time you all will be in with an addition like this.
It is forecasted to continue at least. The forecasts are based on the best information we have, and then a look back at historical trends, and it is forecasted to continue. I'm not the forecast expert.
Right. I understand.
It's an input to our models, but I do know that, I don't believe that it's forecast, it may not be at the same rate of change that we have today. There is still a forecasted increase over time. Specifically in that area, it continues to grow and continues to grow more inland. I mean, there's still a lot of developable property in certain portions of Horry County.
Thank you. Are there any landowners or community citizens that are requesting additional information?
It's a great question.
Meetings with other utilities that need additional information?
We sent letters to affected landowners. We did get some feedback. It was all exclusively just questions about timing, what we should expect to see. We had one person just asking about, hey, educate me on what the difference between 115 kV and 230 kV is. None of that was, objectionable. It was all just having normal questions. There was no one that seemed to object to the project, that seemed to be against it. It was just questions about how they, what they might see, and then how it might impact.
What about adjacent utilities? I'm thinking about Dominion, or if you, just, is there any concern there? Or,
No,
or any other utilities?
This area of the state is somewhat unique in that we don't have a whole lot of Dominion isn't close by.
Makes sense.
Duke Energy
Okay.
Progress is probably the closest, but it's still their facilities are still a decent distance away. So there's really not it's the one area of the state, I think, that we don't have a lot of as much interaction when it comes to other utilities. Now that's from a transmission perspective.
Right. Okay.
Perspective that there is we've got the different cooperatives that are in the area, or electric and
Right.
and we do interact and interface with them to the extent we cross or have an area that we need to coordinate.
Out of curiosity and thinking about your location, what about coordination with the adjacent North Carolina utility?
Again, there's we have tie lines with Dominion Energy Progress, but way up in Marion, and so our facilities don't go into North Carolina, so
right.
there isn't a whole lot of interaction in that specific region.
Okay. This may be a better question for witness Kent, but do you know of any update in terms of information related to DNR and where they are with their approval? And I think I recall PRT has sort of said, this isn't the right word, but that they passed, and DHEC was waiting till the final resolution. Is there an update on any of that? And can you correct me on that real quick summary?
Yeah, Ms. Kent can do that. She's
okay.
We've had conversations about that. She's prepared to discuss that.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioners, any further questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Urban?
Mr. Wagner, how are you this morning?
Doing well, Commissioner. How are you?
Fine. It's good to have you with us. I'm wondering, in terms of the siting of the lines, did you consider using the existing highway rights of way for a portion of the lines? Was that something that was considered?
In this case, no, no, sir. The Highway 501 would have been the logical direction to go with that, given the area. The rights of way on the highway there are very congested already. As you might imagine, as I'm sure you know, that area is there's a lot of growth, a lot, coastal Carolina. There's a lot of different malls and stuff along that corridor, different businesses, very congested. As a general rule, transmission doesn't typically use highway right-of-ways like distribution does. There's just not as much space there, area there, and there's a lot of risk as well with traffic and interaction with our structures, that sort of thing. There's a lot of risk associated with that. So, and in this case, we had a clear corridor already established that stayed out of that congested area.
Very good. Thank you for your response.
Yes, sir.
Commissioners, any further questions for Mr. Wagner?
Chair Belzer.
Commissioner Carolee Williams?
Thank you. I've got one follow-up. Just in thinking about growth and thinking about opportunities, I wondered whether you all evaluated, I think you've got a coal plant that you have abandoned, and whether that is figuring into your analysis of new opportunities as you embrace growth and the need for reliability.
Commissioner, are you speaking of the Granger facility that we've retired and dismantled, or are you speaking of the future whole retirement?
No, I think I'm speaking of Granger.
Okay, Granger. Okay. So yes, ma'am. Granger was a relatively small coal facility. It was two, I believe they were between 60 and 80 megawatt units. Provided a lot of value in the area from a transmission support perspective. But you know, they've been retired, I believe it's since 2012. And we have built transmission to mitigate the effects of the retirement of those facilities. And so this request and going forward request would look more at the system as it is today. Hope that answered your question. I'm not.
Yeah, what you answered, I would expect. I think I was looking really to the future and thinking about whether the retirement of the land associated with Granger gives you a new opportunity for embrace. So it's kind of it's a bit outside of this scope, but it's kind of related to, you know, just really learning and your system better and what those opportunities are, and whether you looked at whether there was any potential for it to have a benefit in this case.
We are so just since you brought it up, there's a city of Conway. We're working with the city of Conway to repurpose that property for a recreation area for the city. So it's being repurposed as an open space that the community can use, that sort of thing. So that process is currently underway.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it again.
Commissioners, anything further? Ms. Driggers, any redirect?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Wagner, thank you for your testimony this morning. We certainly appreciate your appearance. Hope you feel better, and you may be excused.
Thank you.
Ms. Driggers?
Yes, ma'am. Santee Cooper calls Miss Sarah Kent to the stand.
Ms. Kent, if you would raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
And Ms. Kent, could you please state your name for the record again, please?
My name is Sarah Kent.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Burns & McDonnell Engineering Company as a department manager of our Natural and Cultural Resources Group.
Did you prepare or cause to be prepared under your supervision 11 pages of direct testimony previously filed with the Commission on August 23rd, 2023?
Yes.
Are there any changes to that testimony?
No, ma'am.
At this time, I request the direct pre-filed testimony of Ms. Sarah Kent be admitted into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Ms. Kent's 11 pages of pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
Thank you. Have you prepared or caused to be prepared under your supervision the exhibit attached to your testimony as SK1?
Yes, I was contributing author to that report.
Do you have any changes to that exhibit?
Yes, an amended report was filed on September 6, 2023. An additional errata was also filed on October 4th, 2023. I will discuss both of these documents in my direct testimony summary.
Thank you. Chair Belzer, members of the Commission, I request at this time the SK1 exhibit filed with Ms. Kent's direct testimony as amended be admitted as hearing Exhibit 3. And I also request the errata to the same filed on October 4, 2023, labeled SK1A, be admitted into the record as hearing Exhibit 4.
There was an exhibit filed with the direct testimony in August, and then it was refiled in September, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So do we need both, or just the one that was filed in September with the errata?
Yes, ma'am. That's fine. If it's one exhibit, just hearing exhibit 3 is fine as well.
Okay.
Whatever is most convenient for the
Well,
commission.
I mean, if we need both, I'm just trying to make sure that the record is complete, but when I was going through it, I thought that what was filed on September 6th replaced what was filed in August,
Yes, ma'am.
and I just don't know that we need the duplication, do we?
Yes, ma'am. We filed an errata letter.
I'm not talking about the errata, I'm just talking about the main document.
Yes, ma'am.
So if we put in the SK1 that was filed September 6th,
Yes, ma'am.
we'll put that in as hearing exhibit. We'll mark that for identification as hearing exhibit number 3. And then also with that, the errata sheets that were filed on October 4th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
That works. Yeah.
So both of those will be hearing exhibit 3. It'll be a composite exhibit.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Kent, do you have a summary of your direct testimony?
I apologize. I marked it. It is admitted into evidence. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Ms. Kent, do you have a summary of your direct testimony that you can give at this time?
I do.
And please go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Belser and members of the Commission. As noted, I am employed by Burns & McDonnell Engineering Company, Inc. as a department manager of the Natural and Cultural Resources Group within the Environmental Services Global Practice. I have supported Santee Cooper with substation and transmission line linear projects, including performing and managing environmental and local permitting and civil design. In this proceeding, I submitted direct testimony on behalf of Santee Cooper. I was a contributing author of the transmission line siting and environmental report for the Conway to Perry Road 230 kV transmission line and associated facilities, which was included in my testimony as Exhibit SK-1. An amended report was filed on September 6, 2023 to update the number and types of pole structures from the final design, the impacts to wetlands from these structures, and the potential impacts and minimization and avoidance measures to state protected species through coordination with the South Carolina Department of Natural Resources. An errata was filed as SK-1A on October 4th, 2023, noting the change in maintenance clearing of the existing transmission line right-of-way from approximately 9.8 acres to 24 acres. The additional maintenance acreage was determined to be necessary for reclamation of the existing right-of-way and for future operation and maintenance of the existing transmission lines. My direct testimony discussed the route for the proposed line, offered an overview of the short and long-term environmental impacts of the project, the impact of the proposed project to the rare, threatened, and endangered species, wetlands and streams, and summarized cultural resources studies conducted and visual effects of this project. The impacts to the environment, if any, from the construction and operation of the proposed project are anticipated to be limited to the immediate area where new and replacement structures are proposed to be installed, and the approximately 9.7 acres of new greenfield transmission line right-of-way that will be cleared around the existing Conway and Perry Road substations. No additional roads will be required since access to the project area will be within the existing rights-of-way and existing roads. Burns & McDonnell conducted a desktop review of the project area using publicly available databases, including the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service National Wetland Inventory, the Natural Resources Conservation Service Web Soil Survey for Horry County, the U.S. Geological Survey Topographic Maps and National Hydrography Data Set, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Informational for Planning and Consultation, or IPAC tool. The IPAC report indicated 14 federally protected species potentially occur in the project area. Burns & McDonnell performed an in-person habitat assessment to evaluate the potential for federally protected species and/or their habitat to occur in the project area. The project area is primarily cleared overhead electrical transmission line corridor, except for the proposed 9.7 acres of greenfield transmission corridors, which are undeveloped and occupied by wooded land and adjacent to the existing substation facilities. Based on the desktop analysis and field assessment, Burns & McDonnell recommended the project may affect, but not adversely affect, the northern long-eared bat and tricolor bat with no impacts on designated critical habitat or any of the other federally protected species identified as potentially occurring. Burns and McDonnell recommended the project would not jeopardize the continued existence of any threatened or endangered species. Our findings were documented in a request for concurrence letter sent to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, who responded and suggested coordination with the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge to attain a special use permit for the portion of the project that crosses through the refuge. The special use permit application has been submitted and we are awaiting response. Wetlands and water delineations were conducted by Burns and McDonnell and Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions. A total of 16 streams, including the Waccamaw River, and 29 wetlands were delineated for the project. No tidal channels or tidal wetland crossings are proposed. In the identified wetland areas, clearing and construction will involve the use of high flotation, low pressure equipment and temporary matting to minimize ground disturbance. Best management practices will be implemented during construction, including temporary matting, silt fencing, sediment tubes, maintaining vegetative buffers, and using single-lane travel paths when possible. The intent is to restore ruts and depressions as soon as possible. No impairment of water flow is expected, and no structures will be placed in open waters or streams. No permanent impacts to wetlands or streams are proposed, and avoidance and minimization efforts to wetlands or streams have been implemented to the maximum extent practicable. Burns and McDonnell conducted a Phase 1 cultural resources survey, and it was determined unlikely that the project would have any direct or indirect adverse effects to significant archaeological or historical, architectural resources or historic structures. The findings were submitted to the South Carolina's State Historic Preservation Office. On June 21st, 2023, the State Historic Preservation Office determined the proposed project would have no effect on historic properties and that further cultural resources management was not currently required. The project will have a low overall visual effects because, with the exception of less than 1 mile of new right-of-way clearing, the construction will be completed within existing Santee Cooper right-of-way. The project will share existing right-of-way and be parallel or adjacent to existing transmission lines and facilities. And most of the route traverses undeveloped areas where trees will provide screening. As stated in my direct testimony, the impact of the proposed line and associated facilities upon the environment is justified considering available technology and the nature and economics of alternatives, as this route minimizes the effects to the environment, land use, cultural resources, and aesthetics, and is a superior solution to alternative routes to ensure electric system reliability. In my professional judgment, Santee Cooper's decision to use the proposed route was proper. This concludes the summary of my direct testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Kent. Chair Belzer and members of the commission, Ms. Kent is now available for cross-examination by other parties and questions of the commission.
Thank you, Ms. Driggers. Mr. Torrey?
No questions.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions for this witness?
Madam Chair.
I can't see who. Vice Chair Powers?
Thank you. I guess we kind of tipped you off what we're interested in. You got lucky on that. The historical part of this application, did you do that research?
Yes, sir. We have folks, we have senior senior archaeologists within our consulting firm that did all the research and oversaw all the field surveys and prepared the final report to submit to the State Historic Preservation Office, who concurred that there would be no historic impacts on the property.
And you've gotten approval from the State Historical Preservation
Yes,
Group.
that's correct, sir.
You do not have the approval yet from the Georgetown or the, where is it? The local Waccamaw National Wildlife Group.
That is correct. We have submitted our special use permit application to the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge, and we're awaiting their response.
Okay. Is there, from what you just testified to and what I've read, it sounds like there's no required mitigation as far as all these streams and wetlands?
Yes, sir, that's correct. We have proposed no mitigation as there would be no permanent impacts proposed for the project. All construction impacts will be temporary, with temporary clearing and allowing vegetation to regrow.
Okay, when you're doing this actual on the ground sort of evaluation, is anybody from like the Office of Coastal Resource Management with you or involved with that?
No, sir, but we will be submitting applications to that office for the coastal zone consistency determination as well.
So you don't have that yet either?
That's being prepared and will be submitted in the coming weeks.
Okay. And you mentioned bats. What other endangered species is in that area? I'm guessing bears for one thing.
No, sir. There was several sea turtles species that were identified and no potential habitat for those. There were also some other birds, again, that no potential habitat was identified for those as well. The only potential habitat is occurring in the project were the long-eared bat, northern long-eared bat, and the tricolored bat. Okay.
And that's the one area kind of concerns me. You made that determination. Of course, we know who you're working for. Who follows up on that, or who do you get approval from that from?
Yes, sir. We submitted our recommendations of may affect but not adversely affect those species to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And once we obtain our special use permit from the Waccamaw River National Wildlife Refuge, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service will then, we anticipate they will concur with those findings, and which will satisfy Section 7 of the Endangered Species Act for the project, and we can continue with the project.
Will they actually go out on the ground, as I said, and check behind you, or are they just going to look at the paperwork and say, okay?
Yeah, they look at our reports, sir, and our photos and notes and information that we provided in our natural resources report and in the correspondence that we sent to them directly, and make the determination.
Okay. Has DNR approved what you've done so far?
We are continuing, Santee Cooper, we are in correspondence with the DNR currently. They did reach out and have some concerns about potential impacts to state protected species. Santee Cooper has agreed to implement several of the recommended avoidance and minimization measures by the DNR, which includes installing exclusionary fencing in the construction area to help the spotted turtle and the southern hognose snake from entering the construction area. Santee Cooper has also agreed to time of year clearing restrictions. They've adjusted their schedules so as to clear trees only within a certain window of time to limit impacts to the Raffinese bat, which was identified as a state protected species potentially occurring. Additionally, Santee Cooper has agreed to report and avoid any potential wood stork rookeries that are identified in the project area, and any bald eagle nests that may be identified as well. And we're still in communication with the DNR on finalizing what other measures will be required for the project.
Okay, but you do not have that final.
We are still in communication, sir.
So you still got a lot of work to do.
We're getting there.
Yeah. Well, when Santee Cooper gets out there with the bulldozers and the cranes and the backhoes and everything else, who will be supervising that all these things are carried out and protected?
Santee Cooper will be training their personnel on different policies and to these protected resources, and they will also have folks on the ground to monitor these as well. But again, we're working through that with the DNR as well.
Okay, but at that point, you'll be out of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioners, questions? Commissioner Caston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Ms. Kent.
Good morning.
You know, I've had the opportunity now to review a few of these siting and environmental reports from not just Santee, but a few others. And they all appear, to follow a very similar outline for evaluation. One, is this the case, and is this primarily because the various requirements of federal and state agencies that these are the things you got to look at?
Yes, sir. We have to acquire the necessary permits for the project, yes.
And I'm not saying you could rip the cover off and just change the date and name and it would
No,
be
sir.
the same, but the outline pretty much.
Yes, correct, sir. We use the same general outline, but obviously incorporate relevant information from this project.
Understand. And did you and I guess anyone else involved with this review or familiar with South Carolina Code 5833, the Siting Act?
Yes, sir.
So was this siting and environmental report performed to comply with the Siting Act because this transmission line is designated as a major facility?
Yes, sir.
Well, it's thick. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming this morning, and I have no more questions, Madam Chair.
Commissioners, further questions for the witness?
Chair Belzer?
Commissioner Carolee Williams?
Thank you. Witness Kent, good to see you.
You too. Good morning.
Thank you. In your pre-filed direct testimony, you discussed areas that were rated for scenic quality. And is it possible for one of the areas to increase into the high scenic quality category? And what is high scenic quality, and what would it require the company to do?
We do not anticipate any of it being uprated to scenic quality, high scenic quality.
Just out of curiosity, what are the characteristics of high scenic quality? I mean, I just to, it seems like one of those eye of the beholder sort of things.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's a rubric.
Yeah, and again, we use the BLM as a go-by and as our general guidance for identifying and scoring those. So yes, there is some subjectivity to that for sure. But again, given the development in the area and with us being adjacent to the Waccamaw National Wildlife Refuge, but right up against the transmission line, there's a good bit of development, and also in some areas, and a lot of it would be maintained as is. So we don't anticipate any increase in the rating system.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure.
Commissioners, any further questions? Ms. Kent, I wanted to follow up. I think a letter was received from DHEC indicating that they weren't going to be at the hearing, but they were reserving all their rights and statutory responsibilities. Y'all are in communication with DHEC?
Yes, ma'am. We are preparing a construction stormwater pollution prevention plan and a notice of intent to submit to DHEC for coverage of under the general permit, the general permit for construction activities, which is promulgated by Section 402 of the Clean Water Act. So yes, we will be submitting all proper permit applications to them. So.
And I know that there's still permits outstanding per your testimony.
Yes.
The project will not begin construction. Well, let me rephrase that. The main project cannot begin construction until Santee Cooper has all the required permits. Is that correct?
That is correct, ma'am.
Okay. And who checks that to make sure that they don't begin the construction until all the permits are required? Is there a state agency that does that?
Well, yes, ma'am. I mean, if Santee Cooper were to begin construction without the required permits, they would be subject to violations. So they will ensure that all their permits are acquired before commencing construction.
Okay. And I probably should add, I thought this would be under your purview. I hope it is. Santee Cooper has asked for permission to go ahead with some clearing work before the construction of the project actually begins. It's just in preparation of that. And that's allowed under statute. Is this in your area? Can you,
Yeah.
under
And I
your
can
purview, I should say, not
I
your
could
area.
speak to that.
Just curious where that would be.
So again, that would be the clearings of the new 9.7 acres of Greenfield right-of-way, would be primarily the clearing associated with that. Again, we would wait until we've received all clearances and approvals on the project to commence with that. And as mentioned earlier, with discussion with the DNR, Santee Cooper is committed to time of year restrictions, which has adjusted the schedule slightly. So, you know, that all that would be taken into account before clearing commences on the project.
Well, and I think it's initial clearing, excavation, dredging, but you're saying that will wait until all the permits are done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What about the 9 acres?
The 9.7 acres?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that part of what would need to be cleared?
Yes, ma'am. So there will be new greenfield transmission line corridor, which is the 9.7 acres, which is around the existing Conway and Perry Road substations. And then the errata was filed for the additional maintenance clearing that would
Be the 24 acres?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
The 9.7 acres, is that on property owned by Santee Cooper?
Yes,
around
ma'am.
the substation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And then the 24, the greenfield that you talked about, that's along the right of way itself?
Yes, the 24 is maintenance clearing along the existing right of way. That's correct.
Well, when you say maintenance clearing,
Mm-hmm.
is that required? Is that required even if the new line wasn't going to be put in?
Yes, ma'am. It's required for continued maintenance of the reestablishment of the right-of-way for continued operation of the transmission line. Again, the vegetation, it cannot get too high.
Right. Under
so
NERC
it's-
standards?
Yes, correct. So as not to interfere with the transmission lines.
So that was going to be needed whether or not a new line's going in anyway?
That is correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Appreciate that. Commissioners, any further questions for the witness?
Just one.
Vice Chair Powers?
You realize that DHEC, which is now over the Office of Coastal Resource Management,
Yes.
they could require mitigation
Yeah.
when you talk to them or with their final determination.
Yes, sir. And we have submitted a pre-construction notification to the Army Corps of Engineers and to the DHEC as well, so for the 401 water quality certification.
Yeah.
So yes, both have been informed of the project.
I'm just looking at all the maps. There's a lot of water down
There is. It's a wet area for sure.
Thank you.
Commissioners, anything further for the witness? Hearing none. Ms. Driggers, any redirect?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Ms. Kent, thank you for your testimony today. We appreciate your appearance here. You may be excused.
Thank you.
Ms. Driggers, anything further from Santee Cooper?
No further witnesses, but I just wanted, as a point of clarification, when this was filed, we requested permission to begin initial clearing. At this point, based on our discussions with DNR, we've agreed to maintenance clearing windows in certain blackout dates, so that's no longer needed. The approval for initial clearing is no longer needed.
So can we say that request is being withdrawn?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Does that complete your case?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Torrey, is ORS ready to proceed?
Yes, Madam Chair. ORS calls Michael Seaman Wynn.
If you would raise your right hand, do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good morning. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Michael Seaman Wynn.
And by whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by the state of South Carolina as the Deputy Director of Energy Operations at the Office of Regulatory Staff.
And did you prepare or cause to be prepared pre-filed direct testimony in this matter consisting of 12 pages?
Yes.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your direct testimony?
No, I do not.
And if I asked you the same questions today as those posed in your pre-filed direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Madam Chair, ORS would move the direct testimony of Michael Seaman Wynn into the record as if given orally from the stand.
Mr. Seaman Wynn's pre-filed direct testimony will be entered into the record as if given from the stand.
And Mr. Seaman Wynn, did you prepare a summary of your direct testimony?
Yes, I did.
Would you please give that now?
Yes. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. It's nice to see you this morning. My testimony provides the results of ORS's review of the application of Santee Cooper for a Certificate of Environmental Compatibility and Public Convenience and Necessity to construct and operate the Conway to Perry Road 230 kV line and associated facilities. The proposed Conway to Perry Road line would extend approximately 9.25 miles from the existing Conway switching station to the existing Perry Road substation in Horry County. Associated facilities would be constructed at both substations to accommodate the new transmission line. The new line is necessary due to continued residential and commercial growth in Horry County. The new line will help ensure continued reliable electric service to Santee Cooper's customers. This concludes my summary.
Thank you, Mr. Seaman Wynn. Madam Chair, the witness is available for questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Torrey. Ms. Driggers, any questions?
No, ma'am.
Commissioners, questions for this witness? Mr. Seaman Wynn, good morning.
Good morning.
Based on ORS's analysis and review, is it ORS's opinion that there is sufficient need for this line?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did ORS's review look at any alternatives to the line itself or alternative routes?
ORS did review the alternate routes that were addressed by company witness Wagner. We also did review whether other alternatives, I believe we addressed this in my testimony, whether DSM or other mitigation factors could be used to address offsetting the construction of this line. However, it was our opinion that those measures are really better reviewed in terms of siting of a generation facility rather than a transmission facility. So they were not appropriate to be conducted as part of this siting proceeding. But in looking at the alternate lines, the alternate routes that the company had proposed, those lines, as witness Wagner addressed, were longer, more expensive, had additional obstacles, and that the proposed route is the best route for to address the need.
Were there any unanswered issues raised by ORS that weren't resolved to ORS's satisfaction?
No, ma'am. The company was forthcoming with information. ORS was able to complete its review in a timely manner and provide our recommendations to the Commission.
Thank you.
Ma'am.
Appreciate your answers. Commissioners, questions for the witness? Commissioner Caston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, we talked some about that. I think your reference 5833-180A1B, energy efficiency measures, demand side measures. Looking at those things, and as you've stated, it appears that the alternate considerations set forth in that section are better suited for new generation project than a new transmission project nonetheless. ORS recommends Santee Cooper address that section in its rebuttal testimony. Is that nonetheless is is it just in case, or does ORS think that somewhere down the road there should be a clarification on, does that apply to transmission, or what's your thoughts there?
Well, sir, the way that the Siting Act is written, it addresses both transmission and generation facilities. There's no distinction between the two within the Act, within the law. As such, ORS felt that it was appropriate to address all aspects of the law, whether because there's no distinction between generation and transmission. As such, we made the recommendation in my testimony.
Okay. Good enough. Thank you,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Seaman Wynn. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Caston. Commissioners, any further questions for the witness? Hearing none. Mr. Torrey, any redirect?
No redirect.
Thank you. Mr. Seaman Wynn, thank you for your appearance this morning and your testimony. You may be excused.
Thank you.
Mr. Torrey, anything further?
That's all for ORS, Madam Chair.
Okay. Anything further from either party before we adjourn?
No, ma'am.
Okay. I'm going to ask that y'all get with staff council and talk about a proposed order date, if you would. And with that, if there's nothing further, going once, twice. Okay. Thank you. Hope everyone has a good day, and we are adjourned.